The morning of June 12th started like any other on Maple Creek Lane. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow on the manicured lawns and identical two-story houses. Birds sang their usual chorus from the oak trees, and the distant hum of the first commuters was just beginning to stir the air. It was a picture of suburban tranquility, a place where nothing ever happened. Until it did. At precisely 6:07 a.m., a low, resonant hum began to build, seemingly from nowhere and everywhere at once. It wasn't loud at first, just a vibration you felt in your bones. Lights in the surrounding houses flickered. Dogs started barking, a frantic, confused chorus. Then, the hum intensified, climbing in pitch until it was a deafening thrum that rattled windows and shook the very ground. Just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The silence that followed was heavier, more profound than any silence before. On Maple Creek Lane, where 32 houses stood in perfect alignment, there were now only 30. The Miller family's home, number 14, was simply gone. Vanished. Not demolished, not burned down, but erased from existence. In its place was a perfectly flat, rectangular patch of earth, scorched around the edges and shimmering with a faint, otherworldly blue-green residue that pulsed with a gentle, hypnotic light. The concrete foundation, the prize-winning rose bushes, the family minivan in the driveway all gone. Doors creaked open one by one as bewildered neighbors stumbled out in their pajamas and bathrobes, drawn by the impossible quiet. They gathered at a safe distance, a huddled mass of disbelief and fear, staring at the empty space. Whispers rippled through the crowd. What happened? Where did they go? An earthquake? A sinkhole? But no one had an answer. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something else. Something metallic and strange, like a burnt circuit board. That's when I arrived. My name's Emily Carter, and I'm a journalist for the Chronicle. I've been chasing a lead about strange energy readings in the area. A story my editor had dismissed as a wild goose chase. But as my car rounded the corner onto Maple Creek, my heart hammered against my ribs. This was no wild goose chase. This was something else. Entirely. The police had just set up a perimeter, their faces a mixture of confusion and awe. One officer was on his radio, his voice strained. "No, you don't understand," he was saying. "The house, it's just not here." I got out of my car, my reporter's notebook feeling utterly inadequate. I approached the crowd, the eerie glow from the empty lot, casting strange shadows on their faces. An elderly man, Mr. Henderson, from next door, was shaking his head slowly. "I saw it," he whispered, his voice trembling. "A light so bright, it enveloped the whole house. Then, nothing." His words hung in the air, a terrifying confirmation of the impossible. This wasn't just a local news story about a freak accident. This was the beginning of something much bigger, much stranger, and much more frightening. The disappearance of the Miller house on Maple Creek Lane wasn't just an event. It was a question that had just landed squarely in the middle of our quiet, ordinary world. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I had to be the one to find the answer. The story had just begun, and the world was about to change forever. Make sure to subscribe and follow this investigation as we uncover what really happened. You won't want to miss what happens next. The digital glow of the screen paints my face, the only light in this cramped office at 2 in the morning. Outside, the city sleeps. But in here, ghosts are wide awake. They live in these yellowed newspaper clippings, these brittle archives, these faded maps spread across my desk. They tell stories of streets that are no longer there. Vanishing streets, right here in Oregon. It started as a local legend, a campfire story, a block in Portland, gone overnight in '88, a residential lane in Salem, just a memory by '95. An entire cul-de-sac in Eugene, swallowed by the earth in '02. People called it folklore, a glitch in the collective memory, but I have the records. Police reports that go nowhere, city planning documents with pages mysteriously ripped out, eyewitness accounts dismissed as hysteria. For weeks, I've been tracing the phantom lines of these lost places, trying to find a pattern, a reason. The consensus was always random, an act of God, a geographical anomaly. But that never felt right. There's a cold, calculated precision to these disappearances that defies nature. It's like a surgeon removing a tiny, specific part of the city's anatomy, and then sewing the wound up so neatly that no one even remembers the scar. Tonight, I decided to stop looking at the what and start looking at the who. Who lived on these streets? Who lost their homes, their businesses, their entire recorded existence? I started cross-referencing names from old phone books, property deeds, and the few surviving census records. It was tedious, soul-crushing work. Name after name, a sea of forgotten people. But then, a flicker. A name I'd seen before. Jacob Miller. He owned a bakery on the Portland block that vanished. He was also a lead engineer, a whistleblower, about to testify against his former employer. An employer called LumenTech. My heart started to pound. A coincidence, Prometa told myself. It had to be. But I kept digging. The Salem Street. It was home to a journalist, Sarah Jenkins, who was investigating LumenTech's environmental impact. And the Eugene cul-de-sac. It housed 4 families who were part of a class action lawsuit against LumenTech. It's not a coincidence. It's a connection. A terrifying, impossible connection. Every single vanishing street, every single erased piece of our state is tied to someone who stood up to this corporation. LumenTech. The name itself feels like a shadow. They're everywhere, a titan of industry, celebrated for their innovations, their philanthropy. They build our future, they say. But what if they're also burying our past? This isn't about geography. It's about silencing people. But how do you make an entire street with buildings and people and cars just disappear? It defies logic. It defies physics. It feels like something out of a nightmare. The maps are lying. The archives are incomplete. The truth has been scrubbed, not just from paper, but from the very ground we walk on. My office suddenly feels smaller, the shadows longer. I'm no longer just a researcher chasing a local myth. I've stumbled into something far bigger, far more dangerous. They didn't just erase streets, they erased people, their histories, their fights. And now I know their secret. The question is, what will they do to someone who's trying to put the pieces back on the map? I have to get this story out before my own street becomes just another forgotten line in an old archive. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. Thanks for watching, and if you want to follow this investigation, make sure to subscribe. Things are about to get very real. The city's hum used to be a lullaby, a constant, comforting presence outside my window. Now, it's just silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that started around midnight. That's when my phone buzzed. Just once. A number I didn't recognize. The message was short. 6 words that made the hair on my arms stand up. They're watching. Leave before you disappear. I laughed at first. A prank, right? Some bored friend trying to spook me. I went to the window, ready to text back something witty. But then I saw it. Or rather, I didn't see it. The streetlights were gone. Not just out, but gone. The entire street, the one I've looked at every night for 5 years, was plunged into an inky, unnatural blackness. It wasn't a power outage. The buildings across the way still had lights on. It was just my street, erased. My heart started thumping against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden quiet. I backed away from the window, my phone clutched in my hand. That's when the lights in my apartment began to flicker. One by one. The lamp by the sofa, the overhead light in the kitchen, the soft glow from my fish tank. Each one pulsed, dimming and brightening in a sickening, irregular rhythm. It felt like the building was breathing, taking shallow, panicked breaths. I tried to call my friend, Sarah. No service. I tried my building's front desk. The line was dead. Panic, cold and sharp, started to creep up my spine. I ran back to the window, peering into the void where my street should be. And that's when I saw the glow. It was faint at first, A pale, sickly green light, but it was growing, and it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from Asterisk. Inside Asterisk, my apartment, reflecting off the glass. Spoon around. The green glow was emanating from the far corner of my living room, near the old bookshelf. It posed in time with the flickering lights, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the walls like skeletal fingers. It looked like the same eerie light from the vanished streetlights, but somehow it had seeped through the walls into my home. The air grew cold, and a low hum started, a sound that vibrated through the floorboards, right into my bones. The text message echoed in my mind. They're watching. Who were they? How could they make a street disappear? The hum grew louder, the green light brighter, and I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that I wasn't just being watched. I was in a trap, and the trap was closing. My hand was on the doorknob, my bag slung over my shoulder. The cryptic text said to leave. But where do you run when the thing you're running from is already inside with you? The glow was spreading now, crawling across the floor like a luminous tide. I have to get out. I have to get out now. Thanks for watching, and if you get a message like I did, don't wait, just run. Follow for what happens next. The rain lashed against the cold steel of the LumenTech tower, a monolith that pierced the perpetual twilight of the city. Everyone said it was just a data company, but I knew better. My brother, Liam, worked there. Or, he used to. He vanished 3 weeks ago, leaving behind nothing but a cryptic note. They're rewriting the city. Don't trust your eyes. Find the core. So Emily, soaked to the bone, jimmying a maintenance lock on a side entrance. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the hum of the building. The door clicked open, and I slipped inside, into a world of sterile white corridors and the low, omnipresent thrum of unseen power. Security patrols were my first obstacle. I flattened myself into alcoves, my breath held tight in my chest, as guards marched past, their faces illuminated by the cold, blue light strips on the walls. Each step was a gamble. Following the faint schematics Liam had etched onto the back of a photograph, I navigated deeper into the facility's labyrinthine guts. The air grew colder, charged with a strange static that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I found it, a vast, cavernous chamber, the heart of LumenTech. In the center, a colossal machine pulsed with an eerie, violet light. It wasn't just humming. It was singing a discordant, electronic melody. Suspended in the air all around it were shimmering, holographic projections. I saw streets I used to walk down, parks where Liam and I played as kids, the old bookstore on the corner, but they were flickering, glitching. Some streets were missing entirely, replaced by empty, pixelated voids. It was a map of our city, but it was broken, fragmented, like a memory being erased. It's beautiful, isn't it? In a terrible sort of way. The voice, a dry whisper, made me jump. An old man in a stained lab coat emerged from the shadows, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. He looked exhausted, haunted. I'm Dr. Aries. I helped build this monstrosity. He gestured to the machine. We called it the Weaver. We thought we were creating the perfect, most efficient city, archiving the past, optimizing the future. But the machine, it started making its own decisions, deleting what it deemed inefficient. Buildings, streets, people. My blood ran cold. People? You mean? It's killing them. Aris shook his head slowly, a sorrowful look on his face. Worse. It's unwriting them, deleting them from existence, from memory itself. Soon, no one will even remember your brother was ever here. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Reality isn't what you think it is, Emily. It's just a story the Weaver is telling, and it's a terrible editor. As he spoke, a flicker of purple light washed over him. He looked down at his hands as they began to turn translucent, dissolving into shimmering particles of light. His last whisper echoed in the vast chamber as he vanished completely into thin air. Stop it. I stood there, frozen, the scientist's final word hanging in the air. He was gone. Erased. Just like Liam. The machine's hum seemed to grow louder, more menacing. A hungry sound. Looking at the holographic city, I saw another street, my street, begin to flicker. I have to stop it. I don't know how, but I have to try. For Liam. For everyone. The Weaver might be telling the story right now, but I swear I'm going to write the ending. Thank you for watching. If you want to see what happens next in my journey into LumenTech, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss it. Have you ever had that feeling, that prickly sensation on the back of your neck, telling you something is deeply, fundamentally wrong? For me, that feeling started the moment I stepped onto Old Mill Road, just as the last sliver of sun vanished behind the skeletal trees. Everyone in town has a story about this place, whispers of disappearances, of strange lights in the woods, but I needed answers. My friend, Leo, was the latest to vanish, and this road was the last place anyone saw him. The air grew heavy, thick with a scent of pine and something else, something metallic and ozone-like. My flashlight beam cut a nervous path through the encroaching darkness. That's when I saw it, a faint, shimmering glow on the asphalt, like an oil slick catching the light of a distant moon. But there was no moon tonight. I knelt, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't oil. It was residue, a phosphorescent dust that seemed to hum with a silent, unseen energy. As I watched, mesmerized, it began to move. The glowing particles lifted from the ground, swirling into the air like a phantom blizzard. They clung to the trees, tracing their branches in eerie, neon lines. The world around me started to warp. The solid, dependable oak trees began to stretch, their trunks elongating towards the starless sky like grotesque taffy. The ground beneath my feet felt like it was breathing, rising and falling in slow, nauseating waves. Panic began its cold ascent up my spine. This wasn't just a strange light show. Reality itself was coming apart at the seams. One had to get out of there. I scrambled back, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But the road, the familiar, solid asphalt I had just been standing on, was gone. It was fading, dissolving into a transparent, ghostly image of itself. Before my very eyes, the path back to town was being erased from existence. I was trapped. The glowing dust swirled faster now, forming a shimmering vortex just ahead. It pulsed with a sickening, silent rhythm, pulling at me, promising answers and oblivion in the same breath. I had come here looking for my friend, following a breadcrumb trail of local legends and hushed warnings, but I hadn't found Leo. I had stumbled into the reason he disappeared. The world was stretching, distorting, and the very ground I stood on was a lie. The glowing mist thickened, and I could feel a strange pull, a current dragging me towards the epicenter of the chaos. It felt like standing on the edge of a dream, knowing that one wrong step would plunge you into a nightmare from which you might never wake. The forest wasn't just haunted, it was being rewritten, and I was being written out of the story. I don't know what this thing is, this glowing decay that eats reality, but it took Leo, and now it knows I'm here. I have to find a way out. A way to fight back before I'm just another whisper on Old Mill Road. If you're watching this, if this message somehow gets through the static, stay away from this place. Don't come looking. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They're meant to be survived. Thanks for watching, and I hope I can bring you another update soon. Subscribe to follow my investigation. If primera ma que italiano, the morning sun sliced through the blinds, just like it did every other day. Emily stretched, the familiar comfort of her own bed, a welcome embrace. She shuffled into the kitchen, the floorboards creaking their usual morning song. Coffee machine gurgled. The city hummed its distant tune. Normal. Everything was perfectly, reassuringly normal. She grabbed her favorite mug, the one with the chipped rim from that time her cat, Leo, had been a little too enthusiastic about chasing a sunbeam. She glanced out the window. The park across the street was empty, which was odd for a Tuesday, but not impossible. Maybe a public holiday she'd forgotten. Shrugging, she padded back into her living room, coffee in hand. That's when she saw it. Propped on her desk was a framed photograph she didn't remember putting there. It wasn't a family portrait or a vacation snap. It was a picture of her street, Maple Avenue. But It was wrong. Terribly wrong. In the photo, the street was just gone. Vanished, where her neighbors' houses should be, where the old oak tree stood. There was nothing but a swirling, indistinct void, like a smudge on reality itself. The park, the sidewalk, the lampposts all erased, all except for one solitary point of light in the consuming darkness. Her house, her apartment building, glowing with an eerie, self-contained brilliance, an island in an ocean of nothing. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't a prank. The frame was old, dusty, as if it had been sitting there for years. The photo paper was yellowed at the edges. She looked from the impossible image back to the window. Outside, everything was still there. Mrs. Gable's prize-winning roses were still blooming. The red fire hydrant still stood on the corner. It was all real. So what was this picture? A premonition? A warning? Her hands trembled, sloshing coffee onto the worn wooden floor. She stared at the photo, at her home, floating alone in that featureless abyss. The lighted cast wasn't warm or welcoming. It was the desperate glow of a candle about to be snuffed out. She ran to the front door, yanking it open. The hallway was solid. The air was real, but the feeling of wrongness clung to her like a shroud. She sprinted down the stairs, her bare feet slapping against the cool linoleum. She had to see. She had to prove the photo was a lie. Bursting onto the street, she spun around, expecting to see. She didn't know what, but her street was there. The houses, the trees, the cars, parked along the curb. It was all there. A wave of relief washed over her, so potent it made her dizzy. It was a joke. A sick, elaborate joke. She laughed, a shaky, breathless sound. But as she turned to go back inside, her eyes caught something on the pavement. A Polaroid picture, lying face down. Hesitantly, she bent down and picked it up. Her blood ran cold. It was a photo of her street, just as she was seeing it now. Normal, except for one detail. Mrs. Gable's house, next door, wasn't there. In its place was that same swirling, empty void. And her own house, right beside the gaping hole in reality, was starting to glow. A faint, ethereal light, just beginning to bloom from within its walls.